Mr. Lametti, National Chief Archibald has asked the United Nations to investigate Canada for genocide against First Nations. Just wondering if you could give us a brief reaction to that.
That is entirely within the powers of the UN and special prosecutor under their statutes. We have never said we would ever impede that kind of request should the UN decide to do it. We're working with all varieties of Indigenous leadership, but in particular the communities affected thus far. Our proposal was, and still is, to move with a special interlocutor, which wouldn't preclude that other process, but would facilitate the interactions between communities, between levels of government, between the church, and particularly support families and communities themselves as they move forward to determine how they want to deal with it. But certainly there is nothing in that proposal that would not in any way impede the United Nations from that kind of report, that kind of process, were they to decide to go that route.
And would the federal government help the UN in its
We
investigation?
will always cooperate with the United Nations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
What do you see as the significance of the RCMP considering charging the Prime Minister?
Well, I think it talks to the severity of the situation, the decisions that were made, that there was definitely a conflict of interest. And ultimately, did the Prime Minister actually, give his own approval to go on that trip? That's the only way he can get around from being charged with fraud. And the reality is that, there should be only one set of rules in this country, not one for the Prime Minister and one for the rest of us.
And it's so long ago, he hasn't been charged. Canadians may just be saying, well, if he didn't get charged, it doesn't really mean
There's
anything.
no statute of limitations in Canada. So, there definitely is a perception that there's a fraud committed. There's definitely a concern that you have a situation where the rules are different for the Prime Minister than everyone else. And so this has to be relooked at.
And just finally, so what do you think people in the Interlake, people here, people across the country, what do you think they should take from
Look,
this?
this is just another reminder that we have a Prime Minister that's already been found guilty of unethical behavior on 3 other occasions. In the first report, 4 charges that were actually brought against him by the Ethics Commissioner. And this again plays to the story that he's exercising incredibly poor judgment and has, again, got himself in hot water because of bad decisions that ultimately looks like he is above the law, and he shouldn't be. We all should be treated the same.
Sorry, I just arrived late. Did you guys speak about the military report this morning on discrimination?
No, we did not.
No. So what are your
I
thoughts
haven't seen that report.
on the discrimination and how to fight it inside the Canadian forces? I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen the report, so I shouldn't comment on something I haven't even had a chance to
What do
look
you
at.
think about the fact, and it's been well documented, of the presence of right-wing supremacists inside the Canadian Armed Forces and the work that the forces have been trying to do to root them out?
There's no question that over the last number of years that the Canadian Armed Forces is trying to do a better job to make sure everybody feels included. Everybody that serves in uniform in this country should never be discriminated against based upon gender, based upon sexuality, based upon race, based upon ethnicity and religion. And so everybody deserves to be treated equal and be treated with respect. And the workforce is difficult, or the workplace is difficult as it is, being a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, but let's make sure that everybody feels included in that process.
The lack of diversity has also been commented as being a threat to national security. Do you see that as being the case?
I would say that the Canadian Armed Forces has a lot of work to do to ensure that they represent all Canadians, that they need to get into communities, ensure that they have large participation from all different ethnic and cultural groups across this country, and that means that they need to spend more time directly engaged with those communities to do recruiting. And right across the board, we need more people to step up in Canada to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces, especially in the dangerous world we find ourselves in right now. Thanks.
Well, as I said in my tweet, I think it's really important for politicians not to attack central agencies that are nonpartisan, like the Bank of Canada. And we can attack one another. We can attack one another's policy ideas, and we should do it in a respectful way. Yeah. But to attack something like the Bank of Canada, I think just goes beyond. And I didn't like it, and that's why I commented.
Are we entering an era where politicians are openly criticizing institutions like the Bank of Canada? What does this say for the future, possibly?
Well, I think it speaks to an era in politics where we're going to give Canadians a lack of confidence in institutions that we've respected for a long, long time. To me, this is similar to attacking the Canadian military. I mean, I just don't understand why a Canadian politician would want to do that. Give us your ideas. If you have different fiscal policy, provide us with that different fiscal policy, but you don't have to attack, the bank and insult. And I think what I find too often is when we disagree with one another, we insult one another. And as, Conservative leadership candidate Scott Aitchison and I last year wrote an op-ed saying you could disagree without being disagreeable. I think that's a lesson that we knew as mayors, and it's something that federal politicians need to learn more of.
And I mean, Pierre Poilievre is the front runner. I mean, he's taking all these positions. What would that mean if he were effectively elected leader and then became leader of the official opposition? Like, what would that mean for the future of the Conservative Party of Canada?
Well, I'm not a Conservative, and I don't get to make a decision as to who their leader is. So I'll let Conservative members choose their leader. What I would hope for is that in all parties, my party and the opposition parties, we all have a sense of responsibility to instill confidence in the population in our central institutions, and also not to attack one another in an unfair and mean way. I think respectful politics is what Canadians are looking for, not attack dogs.
Did you find that Finance Committee today was a little calmer with Mr. Poilievre not being there, given the amount of attacks he's laid at the governor's doorstep?
Well, unfortunately, I was at a Panay Birth press conference this morning on an anti-Semitic audit report, so I didn't see Finance Committee. But the more respectful committees are, again, I think the more they breed confidence in politicians from all parties.